This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan and its implications. The participants are Shashank, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
We're talking about US President Joe Biden's decision announced last week to withdraw all US forces from Afghanistan by September 11, 2021. Almost exactly 20 years after the devastating terrorist attacks on the US led to the launch of that global war on terrorism, which was focused on Afghanistan. The NATO troops will also be withdrawn along with the US troops. As you're aware, President Biden announced that it is now time to end the forever war, he said on 14th April. Its primary mission of denying terrorists a haven in Afghanistan. Now, in your assessment, Ambassador Shashank, would you say that that mission has actually been accomplished?
I don't think the Americans are talking of the mission being accomplished. What they're talking of right now is that, number one, 2 Republican and 2 Democratic presidents have taken charge of the American and NATO involvement in Afghanistan from where they feel that the planning was done for the 9/11 attacks. Therefore, they don't want a 5th president to also get involved with this, which means that there seems to be some tiredness the way the whole thing has been projected, number one. Secondly, the Americans have tried both a surge under President Obama and then a decision under President Trump that he would withdraw all the troops suddenly. So therefore, in between these 2 extreme positions, the Americans are saying that, well, they will withdraw by September, and after that, while bulk of the troops will go, but some would remain for the security of the American embassy in Afghanistan. So therefore, some technical support, etc. may still be there. And basically, it is nobody's case that America or any external force has to provide security in Afghanistan on a permanent basis. Even Indians who were, according to some experts who were once asked by the American presidents or their senior advisors that they should get involved either in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in other places. So the Indians had at that time said, look, we are willing to go for developmental activities, social welfare activities, but whenever it is a question of involvement of the troops, we go normally on the UN decision-making process. We don't do it on the basis of plurilateral or our own unilateral things unless there is something direct impact on India. So that we'll have to keep in mind that if there is a kind of consensus which develops in India that we need to increase our participation in peacemaking in Afghanistan, we can think of that. But at the moment, there is a consensus apparently in India that we should not get involved in Afghanistan. We should allow the other regional countries and America and other NATO powers to work out the arrangements in Afghanistan so that they can strengthen the American presence or American support to the Afghan National Security Forces.
But Shashank sir, the point is that this decision would seem to indicate that there is no possible military solution and that the Taliban cannot really be sort of vanquished militarily, as it were. So they have to be perforce included into any kind of peacemaking process for the future of that country. Now, does this mean that, for India, the Taliban has always been a very difficult sort of entity with which to try and go into any business. So for India, which is going to be taking part on the April 24th Ankara meeting, what exactly does this really mean? The Taliban is calling the shots to some extent. They're saying they will not attend the Ankara meeting till the foreign troops are all out. But if they do attend, it isn't really the best of news for India, at least.
Well, quite right. This is really a worrisome position for India at present, that Taliban seem to be gaining the upper hand, number one. Secondly, Taliban have had support from the Pakistani security establishment who are feeling self-congratulatory to see that how they can increase their position in Afghanistan. And countries like Qatar, Turkey, and maybe some other regional powers, they feel that they can play a more important role. With India, the situation is that, we have spent a lot of money in social welfare and developmental activities in Afghanistan. We would not like that to go completely waste. That's number one. Secondly, Taliban have 2 identities. One is the Islamic identity plus the control by the Pakistani security establishment. And the second one is that many of them are Pashtuns. And Pashtuns generally don't have, I mean, if you find the general public in Afghanistan, they have very sympathetic and friendly feelings towards the Indians. So it is not that as such they are anti-Indians. But the point is that when it becomes a combination of the Taliban as Islamic forces, plus whatever support they get from the other Islamists elsewhere and the Pakistani security establishment, then they try to do this. So we have to put pressure on Pakistan to behave in a more responsible manner. Secondly, we have to work along with the other regional countries to make sure that Taliban, or there are supposed to be over 22 groups which are fighting in Afghanistan for control over different parts of the Afghan territory. So we have to just make sure that they all try to behave more responsibly and do not keep Afghanistan unstable all the time.
But Ambassador, that is easier said than done. And all said and done, India does have extremely legitimate stakes in Afghanistan. We've invested well over $2.3 billion there in, as you said, a lot of infrastructure and other social works. And we do have, on average, the Afghan has a good impression of India and is favorably inclined. But Pakistan, as you rightly said, has been constantly trying to be inimical to India and trying to keep it out of Afghanistan in any which way. We were also the first country to have the strategic partnership with Afghanistan, as you know.
Not only strategic partnership with Afghanistan, but also we developed a trilateral partnership with Afghanistan and Iran. And the Shah Bahar Port and the infrastructure linkages going up to Afghanistan and beyond into Central Asia, they were all developed, and we got a special dispensation from the Americans that there will be no sanctions imposed on this infrastructure connectivity despite whatever their LISA or ISA Act is there in the American Congress against Iran. Therefore, we have a real, we must work hard on this. It's not an easy situation. We have many people in India who have personal friendships with people in Afghanistan. And we must try to build up on those friendships. Then we have friends in many of the countries in the Gulf and in Central Asia. We should build up on these friendships. And we cannot make out a case that Americans have to stay there permanently. That would be a very weak position to be taken by a country like India, that a foreign country should keep permanently control over the sovereignty of Afghanistan. Therefore, we have to give the primary role to Afghanistan. Then the regional countries have to come together to make sure that Afghanistan, whatever achievements have been made, particularly, let's say, in their democratic processes, particularly for their women education, their women getting into the various activities, social and official activities. So I think there should not be reversal on all that.
No, I completely agree with you, and I appreciate what exactly it is that you're saying, Ambassador. But the point is that if so many rounds of talks, as far as I'm aware, there have been 23 rounds of separate talks and all that were happening between the various groups led by the United States in that effort. Despite all of that, the Taliban and the inter-Afghan conversation has not really even begun per se. So what will really make that change? The Afghan defense minister was in Delhi last month. And he was fairly candid in saying that President Ghani is absolutely adamant that there have to be elections first, and then there would be any other processes of dialogue and resolution. And the situation today is different from what it was 20 years before. But the Taliban does not seem to accept that. So why would they now want to change, especially since they see this as a possible victory with the United States declaring it will leave?
Well, that is true that the Taliban feel it's a victory for them. That kind of a victory is a Pyrrhic victory. It will not help them at all. And Afghan people also are staunchly nationalistic people, number one. If you recall that originally when Pakistan was to be given recognition in the United Nations, the only country which did not agree to do that was Afghanistan. And we have to keep those things in mind. I think there is a feeling in India that really we cannot allow Indian security interests to be jeopardized in any way. And therefore, we have taken a view that there are no good negotiators and no bad Taliban. So I think we need to build also linkages with the various people. The government may not be able to do that straight away, but I'm quite sure that we must be having many academics, many journalists, many other people. And also we have many of the people of Indian origin living in different parts of the Gulf and other places. We need to work through them. And then we have many friends, really in this region. In Afghanistan, if you remember that the Northern Alliance, along with Iran and India and Russia at one time, had been able to create the situation for a democratic form of government in Afghanistan. Later on, we withdrew and gave priority to the NATO and the United States.
Ambassador, as you said, the Gulf countries, the regional countries have been very active even in the background. And in fact, today, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar is in Abu Dhabi, as is the Pakistani Foreign Minister. And there are reports that the two of them are likely to be in a meeting sort of brokered by some well-wishing third parties like the United Arab Emirates. Is Afghanistan, do you think, a core issue of what they will be talking about in these discussions?
I don't know really, because these are discussions which have not been confirmed by either the Pakistan side or the Indian side. The UAE is the only one which has said that they are trying to work behind the scenes to bring about a dialogue between India and Pakistan. That if this dialogue takes place, it must include the issue of no terrorism in India, no terrorism in Kashmir, and then of course Afghanistan, because we have seen all these people who have moved, terrorists who have moved from Middle East, they are trying to move into South Asia and Southeast Asia. And therefore, it's an extremely important thing where Americans can simply say that, all right, there are so many thousands of kilometers away from Pakistan that Pakistan made a fool of them and collected billions of dollars. But UAE is nearby, Saudi Arabia is nearby. They cannot allow to do this. They have already withdrawn their assistance programs to Pakistan. So I think they are in an important position to use their leverage on Pakistan.
The other problem is, of course, as you said right at the outset, the basic problem, even the CIA director, William Burns, has sort of accepted that the US withdrawal will come with a significant risk that groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda might again try to rebuild their presence in Afghanistan. And for them, plot attacks against US interests. But for us, it's very worrisome, because if Afghanistan descends into that kind of chaos, the spillover effects in our region, I mean, not only into Pakistan, but legitimately into maybe places like Kashmir and all that in India is a huge worry.
We really have to make it very clear that India has been a soft power all this time, but we should be able to exercise hard power as we have done. We should tell them very clearly that if the Afghans want any kind of help from us, we should be quite willing to do that, except for putting boots on the ground or sending our instruments there. But we can give all kinds of technical support that the Afghans want. We should be quite willing to go ahead in that direction and gradually build a consensus in India in favor of a harder line, so that whether it's ISIS or whether it is Al-Qaeda or others, they do not think in terms of converting India into the base for their Ghazwa-e-Hind or whatever they want to do, an Islamic state in South Asia.
Because that is a very legitimate and a long-lasting worry that all strategic thinkers and the Indian establishment, I'm sure, is extremely worried about. But I suppose we should wait and watch and see what happens in Ankara on the 24th of this month. If the Taliban perhaps joins in those talks, are you at all hopeful that there will be some forward movement?
Well, for the time being, they are doing their shadow boxing kind of thing. They are asking the Americans to leave by May. So still, maybe it's a bit too late for them to continue asking for this demand needs to be revised, first of all. And then they can talk about something which is more reasonable. I think they are perhaps trying to extract as many concessions as possible from the Americans. So the domestic situation, America makes it necessary for them to withdraw one way or the other.
So then I suppose the situation continues to remain very, very sort of uncertain, and we're not sure looking ahead what exactly is going to happen. I guess this is one of those situations where India doesn't really have too much to do but to wait and watch. Would you agree with that, Ambassador?
I will agree with that. Only thing is that we don't want Americans, as they had tried to build a kind of a dialogue between India and Pakistan for Afghanistan and Kashmir, that we don't want them. So without that kind of a scenario, we can think in terms of the direct impact on the Indian security. And for that, if we have to carry out any kind of dialogue with the neighboring countries or with USA or NATO powers and all that, we should be quite prepared to do that. And we should also bring into this calculation this new Quad formula that we are thinking of as to what does it mean for us. I mean, if you are thinking only of maritime security, does that mean security for India also? Does it mean security only for some American allies in that region, in this South China Sea area?
I think we've sort of come up today with as much as we can. We'll thank you so very much, Ambassador Shashank.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan and its implications. The participants were Shashank, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our website newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.